Welcome to the Walk-Ons. I'm Trent Donald here with John Watson, Zach Yearwood, and Mia Bryan from First Coast News. Is that really true?
In the house, ready to rumble.
So Mia, you were from New Jersey originally, now with First Coast News. How's your journey like from there to now?
Been a long, winding road, to say the least. It all started, I know a lot of people reference American Pie with this one time at band camp. Well, I always say this one time at sports broadcasting camp, as that's kind of where my journey started. Ian Eagle previously ran a broadcasting camp with Bruce Beck of NBC4 New York, and I was fortunate enough to attend that at the age of 15. They told me they thought I had a future in this thing. And that led me to Ithaca College, which led me to Iowa, which has led me to here. And I think that it's actually pretty fitting that I have my set behind me, because I think it represents all the different walks of life of where I've been. But in the short of it, working at or doing the camp, working at MSG Varsity, the MSG Network's high school sports network, that set me up for my college career at Ithaca College in upstate New York. My senior year there, I freelanced at WEMY, the ABC affiliate in Elmira, among 9 other internships. If you want to talk internships, we could talk internships all day. And then from there, made the jump to Market 88, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, with the CBS Fox affiliate out there. I was there for 3 years before making the jump here to Jacksonville, and I have officially been here, I believe it is 19 months now.
So what's your advice for us college journalists trying to make it into professional?
Biggest thing is be open to any and everything. Because of the nature of our world right now, I've had the opportunity to Skype in, Zoom into a lot of different classes. And the biggest advice I can give is, while you're in college and you have the opportunity to do play-by-play, to do reporting, to do anchoring, and you can fail, and it's okay because you're a college kid, do it. But more than just that, and this was something that I actually spoke at my alma mater virtually on Monday, and one of the things that my professor, whose class it was that I was speaking at, that he always encouraged me, and this is something that, you don't realize until you're out of the business. While you are a college student, you have the very unique opportunity where you can email or tweet or direct message just about anybody in the field. DM any of these professionals, because you can say, hi, I have to write a paper. I would really love to get to know, just take 20 minutes of your time to get to hear about your journey. If you would be okay with that, I'd be honored. And then you leave it at that, as it's a class project. And 9 times out of 10, thankfully, people in this field are pretty open to that, and they probably will give you more than 20 minutes. As my professor put it, that's because we love to talk about ourselves in this field. And so that's something that once you get out of college, you can't take for granted. That, I can't call someone up and say, hey, I'm writing a paper, John Buchagras, like, can you give me 20 minutes of your time? I really can't do that. And so utilizing the fact that you are a college student, you are a sponge, to its fullest is the biggest advice I can give.
Sweet.
How has the social distancing and being forced to stay at home, how has that changed your job? Has it made it easier? Do you prefer interviewing via Zoom? Has it made it harder, more difficult to actually go out and actually find interviews?
There's been positives and negatives to it, for sure. As you can tell, this is my anchoring set behind me. Obviously, I would much rather, I think, be in a studio, although they keep telling me I talk more normal / less like amped up when I'm sitting here at this studio. So maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you view me as an anchor. But as far as the Zoom interviews, the FaceTime interviews, it's forced us to get really creative. And that's something that I have personally always enjoyed and thrived at, with trying to raise the bar. So whether it's, coming up with a way where if we do a FaceTime, it's not that you're just staring at a blank screen, you're just seeing the interview. Doing it so that I put it up against a laptop and we have a cool background. Or if you're talking about working out, maybe you put your FaceTime phone next to working out equipment. And trying to get creative like that. I think it's also kind of similar to the point I just made about how college students have the unique opportunity where they can reach out to anyone and they'll probably respond. I think we're all kind of in that unique opportunity right now because everyone's at home. Everyone's looking for a way to connect with each other. And so even my talent coach that I work with runs the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting down at Full Sail University in Orlando. And he was joking about how some of these, famous directors, actors, broadcasters that he's been able to bring in, they never would have made the time of day for them. But because they're all sitting at home just like us, looking for a way to give back, looking for a way to help other people, they're more than willing to do that. And so I know, especially with doing some stories on the iRacing that NASCAR has been doing, it astounded me when they texted me and they're like, oh, yeah, you're going to talk to Ty Dillon tomorrow, Chase Elliott the next day. No Kyle Larson, don't worry, everyone. So it was definitely interesting that, these guys are just like us. They're all kind of sitting at home. And even with the Jaguars, they've made players available because they're all doing what we're doing. And so I think we're actually, as sports reporters, getting to see perspectives we might not otherwise have seen.
So, how do you find stories when there's no, live sports going on?
Definitely got to get creative. That's a given. But I think we have been very fortunate in Jacksonville as a market because we have the NFL. One of 32 cities that has the NFL draft proceeding as normal. So that has certainly helped me for right now. We have been able to do NFL stories, and that has certainly helped us. I know that once next week gets done, then it's going to have to be kind of back to the drawing board. That's okay because we've been fortunate enough that during this last month, we've been able to brainstorm some ideas. Moreover, if you think sports reporters are bored right now, imagine how sports PR people are. They are very bored. And so within the first 2-3 weeks of the stay-at-home order, I have PR people from NASCAR, from all the different universities, from the high school, everyone's reaching out, trying to, make people available, try to get, hey, our one student athlete is raising money doing this. One of our student athletes or our teams has transitioned to, they're knitting masks, things like that, where they still have a connection to the current state of affairs, but they also are still sports related. And the final thing I will say, and this is something I know our management has been pretty happy about at First Coast News, at the end of the day, life still has to go on. Whether it's the fact that, unfortunately there are still other evils in the world, but there are also still a lot of good things happening in the world that don't have anything to do with COVID-19. And so one story I did 2 weeks ago, basketball season, as you know, at the high school level, I know unfortunately at the college level it didn't complete itself, but at the high school level here in Florida, the basketball season had finished. They were ready to roll out their postseason awards. And so Isaiah Adams over at Paxson School for Advanced Studies won the Mr. Basketball Award for the state of Florida. He's just the second Jacksonvillian to ever win the award. And actually, James Collins, who's the head coach at Paxson's rival, Jackson, that is actually where he coaches, and that's where he had played. And so I was able to do a round table via Zoom with the two of them. And that's a story that's not about Corona. And you know what? At the end of the day, people like to hear things that are positive, and that is where sports, in my opinion, is still essential and will always be essential, especially in the frame of a 26-minute newscast.
So next Thursday is the draft, Mia. You're in a Zoom today with Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell. What do you think is your kind of guess of who they're going to draft this round, on Thursday, do you think?
I can almost assure you that a defensive tackle will be taken with either pick 9 or pick 20 or whatever picks the Jaguars have in the first round, or trade up or down for. Doug Marrone stressed when we spoke to him 2.5 weeks ago that building a strong defense up the middle was of a priority. The Jaguars signed linebacker Joe Schobert to address that need in the second tier. And on the first tier, with the departures of Calais Campbell and Marcel Darius, it's very thin up there at D tackle. It becomes interesting, I think, because Marcel Darius was so much more than just a nose tackle, but he was a nose tackle. And there really aren't a lot of those on the board. Dave Caldwell did say today, though, and I found it extremely interesting, and you can read into it however you want. I know there's plenty of people on the internet saying anything Dave says to the public is a lie. He's trying to keep everything to his chest, whatever. I think he's correct when he says there obviously is a lot of talent in the offensive tackle position at the top in this year's draft class. There's no question. Those 4 guys at the top, I mean, they're all have the potential to be all pros. And the 2 guys that follow them in Austin Jackson and Isaiah Wilson, they also could turn out to be studs as well, not to mention Josh Jones out of Houston. But that's the thing. As Caldwell said, there is talent once you get past those top 4 for those of you who are curious, Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Willis, Tristan Wirfs, and Mekhi Becton, those being the 4 tackles at the top. Once you get past those 4, though, there is still talent. And moreover, Caldwell believes even when you get to those middle, late rounds, there are guys that are talented enough that if you give them 1 or 2 years of learning, they could turn into potential starters down the road. And he said that is not the case at the defensive tackle position. Once you get past that top 5, it gets kind of lean. And so that's why I anticipate the Jaguars jumping on a defensive tackle at some point in the first round. However, the cornerback position and the Jaguars' needs there, I think, will also play a factor. The number 1 player on their board, from what I have gathered and heard, is Jeff Okudah out of Ohio State. If he is to fall past number 3 to the Detroit Lions, I don't see the Jaguars jumping up to 4. That's just me personally. Because I think at 5 and 6, you will be seeing quarterbacks, and because the Giants really don't have a need at corner right now. But if he is there at 7, you can expect the Jaguars to jump up for him. I don't see them jumping up for any other cornerbacks, but I do see them drafting a corner with their 2nd first-round pick if they do still hold on to 2 picks in the 2020 NFL draft.
Are they holding on to Yannick Ngakoue to try to get some capital on draft night?
That would be nice. I can tell you right now, they don't want anything less than a first. There are a lot of people out there that think that the Jaguars should be okay with 2 2s, whether that's a 2nd this year and a 2nd next year, or a 2nd and a 5th this year and a player who already is established in the league. But from what I have been told, this is a situation very similar to Jalen Ramsey's earlier this past year. Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, will have to sign off on it, and he has said that he is not taking anything less than a first-round pick for Yannick Ngakoue, in addition to other capital, whether that's a 3rd or a 4th or a player. I don't think the Jaguars are going to get that, personally. Do I think that that means they hold him hostage and, make him play this year or make him hold out? Yes, because under the new CBA rules, he can hold out and not be fined. He can just not play for a year. Personally, in your prime, do you want to do that? No, but I think he's kind of become very stubborn with this situation and would be okay with it. And so that's another thing that I think the Jaguars will address in this draft, whether not necessarily trading Ngakoue, but recognizing that they won't have his services on the field this year, even if they have it in writing, and trying to address the edge rusher position on day 1, day 2. That's something that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about, but I can assure you that the Jaguars are thinking about, because I don't think the situation with Ngakoue is going to be resolved, and we're all going to be singing Kumbaya anytime soon.
At the Iowa draft, the mock draft on Monday, with the Epineza and Wirfs, what do you see from those 2 guys in the draft?
Yeah, so Tristan obviously is among the top 4 offensive tackles. What's really unique about him and why I actually think of the 4, he could be the best fit in Jacksonville. He has played left tackle. He has played right tackle. There are many analysts who think he actually projects as a guard. That's what the Jaguars need. They need somebody who can play every position, and he has proven to do that. Really, by many accounts, and I should say this disclaimer, I have covered Tristan Wirfs, reported on him since he was 16 years old at Mount Vernon High School. Shout out to Mustang Nation. So to be quite honest, when he was coming up through the ranks, whether it was in football, baseball, wrestling's different, but track, whatever they needed him to play, he could play because he's that much of a freak athlete. You'll see the videos online of not just the hang clean where he demolishes 500 pounds, but the doing the backflips, the walking with handstands. Like, he is a freak. And I think that that's something the Jaguars could benefit from. With that said, again, I believe that the Jaguars not only have an SEC bias, but they plan on addressing defensive tackle earlier because they know that there is a fall off in talent after there. I think Epineza is a very interesting candidate and has become more interesting for the Jaguars as the weeks have progressed. Number one, because the situation with Ngakoue remains unresolved, as I mentioned earlier. But two, because he ran a 5.0140, his stock has fallen. A lot of people have him falling out of the top first 32 picks. I think that's a situation where Dave Caldwell could trade up for him, even though the Jags have a relatively early second-round pick in 42. I don't think he's there at 42, but I think if they trade up to, say, 34, 36, yes, he could be there. And he is definitely a player that changes the game, just like Ngakoue. He's kind of a tweener. You know, they complain of, oh, well, he's not big enough, but he's not big. He's not big enough to play inside, but is he, too big for the outside? The dude had 22 and a half sacks and 30 tackles for loss and 9 forced fumbles over the last 2 years. You tell me who that sounds like. To me, that sounds a whole lot like Yannick Ngakoue, and he's better at stopping the run, and he obviously has more tackles for loss. And so I think he actually, my Iowa bias aside, I think he actually could thrive in Jacksonville's system.
I was going to ask if that mock was Iowa biased because you had 2 picks from the school in there.
Yeah, so that was actually, it was not me that wanted to do an Iowa mock. I had several people request, because I think Tristan Wirfs has actually picked up a bit of a following here in Duval County, because he is this freak that you see on Twitter and Instagram doing the crazy things he does. And so I had seen several other writers talk about drafting one or the other, or possibly both. It's not just me. I've seen several analysts at the national and the local level that have suggested the Jaguars looking at both. I will say this. Dave Caldwell did ask me, why didn't you ask an Iowa question on today's teleconference? So you can read into that if you want, folks. Feel free.
Mia, I got to ask about the workout video with Caleb Von Chison a couple weeks ago where he was wearing Jags gear. I've never seen a recruit or a prospect come in wearing a team's gear for a workout. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird, to be honest. And I don't think he's going to be there at 20. I mean, could the Jags trade up for him? Maybe. But I thought that was kind of weird. What I did find very interesting today, though, in regards to those workouts from home that a lot of players have been doing because their pro days were canceled, Dave Caldwell said that they actually are taking those not only extremely seriously, but seriously to the point where they hope the guy isn't lying and it's actually 40 yards, and they have a stopwatch. And as they're watching the video, they are literally timing it to make sure that the time that they say is accurate. So, hey, you know what? You dress for the job, not that you have, but that you want. So maybe there's something to be said there. As much as Calais is gone and the mayor has left the building, I mean, there is a hole in Saxonville, whether we like it or not, and there's probably going to be 2 once Yannick Ngakoue leaves as well.
Do you think Josh Allen can fill the gap that not only Yannick is probably going to leave when he is more than likely gone at the beginning of the season, but also help other players like Taven Bryan step up for Calais? Like the amount of playing time he got last season, will that translate to an improvement for the younger guys on that defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen is going to be an all-pro at some point over the next 4 years. It's as simple as that. But here is where my concern comes into, which is because he had 10 and a half sacks last year, because he made a Pro Bowl, as much as Nick Bosa had more of the notoriety and got the awards, people know about Josh Allen now. He is going to be double and triple teamed. That's why I think the Jaguars have to take an edge rusher before day 2 is done, because you need someone to pair with him. You cannot just rely on having one edge rusher. As Doug Marrone once said, it's kind of like chocolate chip cookies. You just can't have enough of them. And so that's where I think they have to go get someone, and they didn't in free agency. They addressed the middle. And so it's funny you bring up Taven. I think Taven Bryant will be a rotational piece for this team, at least for the next 2 years until his rookie contract runs out, and there's nothing wrong with that. I also don't see Al Woods or even Ronnie Gunter really being anything more than rotational pieces. But if you have a lot of rotational pieces, that obviously helps you. You got more bodies there to keep fresh and to create depth. Avery Jones has obviously been a tremendous veteran for this team. He's going to be the biggest veteran presence. He's been on the team since 2013. No one's been a tenured Jaguar longer. But at the same time, he too is not a 3-down defensive interior lineman. He's only going to give you 1 or 2 downs per drive, or not per drive, but you know what I'm talking. So that's just why I think the interior part of that defensive line needs to be addressed so early on, because you need a stud. Calais Campbell was coming inside, especially once Marcel Darius went down with an elbow injury, and that's not really his natural position. He's just extremely versatile and can. And so that's where I think you need a stud. You need some sort of stalwart up the middle. I don't think Taven Bryan's that guy, but hey, if he gives you depth, that's great. Oh, and DeJuan Smoot too. We can't forget. I mean, he really was, I mean, kind of the 3-4 guy, especially when Calais had to shift more inside. He did provide that pressure on the other edge opposite Josh Allen. And so that's where, I think, yes, he could have similar production this year, but he only had, 5-6 sacks? Like, that's great. But if he's going to be supposedly the next Yannick, we need an even further step forward.
We're going to take a break now for the Walk-Ons podcast. Thank you, Mia, for your time today on your Jaguars Talk. We definitely learned a lot about the draft next Thursday.
Awesome, guys. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, Mia.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you again to Mia O'Brien of First Coast News for Jaguars Talk. Now we're going to pivot to Zach Yearwood with this Jared Green story. What's that story about, Zach?
So, high school 5-star recruit basketball player Jalen Green is not going to college next year. Instead, he is doing something completely unprecedented that the NBA has been working on for a while. He is going to join the G League professional pathway to join the NBA after next season. So what this does is he gets a year in the – I just caught my pen after it slipped out of my hand. He gets a year in the G League. He gets professional coaching. He gets a salary. He gets a 6-figure salary coming straight out of high school. He gets practice sessions with veteran NBA players. And because he's in the G League, he's able to bypass all the NCAA's amateurism rules. So that means the salary, like I said, he's expected to get endorsements as soon as he joins the G League team, etc. What this does is it's interesting. So I kind of knew, like we kind of all knew that the one and done deal with the NCAA was kind of going away, especially once Zion burst out of his shoe against UNC. Like that injured him for almost the rest of that entire season. And people were seriously worried because here's this supposedly generational player who had to go to college and got hurt in college, and it could have cost him his career because that was a very scary injury. So the NBA Adam Silver has been working with the commissioner of the G League for the last year and a half to try to get a way to avoid a situation like a Zion Williamson, and to avoid a situation like Kevin Weir, the Louisville player who had that gruesome leg injury in the tournament a few years ago. So this is really a huge step forward, and I'm really interested to see how it goes. And what it also does is, sorry, I'm going to let you guys talk in a second, but players like LaMelo Ball and RJ Hudson, I believe is his name, they went to Australia to play because they didn't want to go to college this year. So what this does is this stops the players that are already in the States from going overseas so that the NBA gets to keep all their talent at home at the same time. So it's just a win-win for the NBA. The only real party that loses here is the NCAA.
So I have a question, and I haven't really read up on this, so I'm not really – I could have answered my question already, but I'll ask you. So what team do you play for in the G League? If you're going to – like how's that determined?
So they haven't worked that out yet based on what I've read. They're still trying to find a way to do it. And on top of that, because it's just going to be one season of professional development in the G League, there isn't much of an incentive for the G League coaches, for the G League commissioner to do anything to help the player except that they want to see him succeed. So I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know what team they're going to go to, but it's going to be interesting to see for sure.
It's like the best outcome for a player at high school because you get that experience with the veteran guys. So that kind of learning on the fly with them. And I feel like just like when going to Duke for 1 year leaving, it seems kind of just like a waste opportunity. So with this, like you mentioned, 6-figure salary is not too bad for a teenager. So you're going out of high school, give yourself a nice little 5.0 Mustang and play for the Erie Bayhawks. Is that what they're called now?
I have no clue. I don't know any G League teams.
I do name all G League teams in the NBA.
I do feel like if you go to a school, then you can have kind of the reputability of actually like, going to school. But that's just me. Like telling your kids that like I went to Duke University for 1 year, that's pretty dope.
It's not just that though. So what I've been reading, I've seen some reports, I'm not sure how substantiated this is, that not only are they getting a salary, but they're paying for their college education at the same time. So the players are only going to, the high school players that are coming out of high school are only going to be playing like 10 to 12 real games in the G League, while the rest of their time is spent on their education, their family, their development as a person and as an athlete. And the biggest thing for me is for decades, the NCAA, or not even decades, let's just look at since 2010 when the NCAA signed, or 2014 when they signed that $10 billion deal with CBS for March Madness alone. The players got none of that. Like, so for years, the NCAA and college athletics have been making money off of players. Yes, they've been giving them scholarships, but some of these players, they're putting their bodies on the line and they're not getting any reward, because if they get injured, they may not be able to go pro, etc. So that's what my 2 cents on that.
I think I'll reference the story this week of doing about basketball student managers. One person got a job with the Tampa Bay Rays. The other person did video operations intern with the Oklahoma State Thunder. I guess just talking to you guys about how important it is for like managers to kind of like get, I guess, the payoff, because a lot of times a lot of grunt work of managers, to white floors, do laundry, I guess what I would ask you guys is, what is the most heartwarming story you guys have like heard of in the past like 5 years of like these kind of scenarios?
I don't know any from managers. I've been around quite a bit of athletics in the last few years, but I don't know too many stories about managers getting to go into the professional world doing what they've been doing in college and getting to show their expertise in what they've been training for the last 2 years. Because believe it or not, this is a professional development program for them too. It's not just the athletes, it's not just the students, or it's not just the athletes that are getting the professional development, it's also managers, like you said, and these are possibly going to be the future coaches of teams. So it's really fun to see, and I love seeing stories like this.
Yeah, I haven't seen many like, success stories, but you always hear of like, the janitors of some of these organizations, like, working up, you're like playing 2K and then just like little commentary in the background. It's like, oh yeah, he used to be the janitor, here at Staples Center or something like that. But I think that the connections that you can make as a manager are probably the most important things you'll ever do in your life, so, for your career. And, if you're connecting with these basketball players and you want to be, a manager down the road, you can be like, hey, what's up, Ivan Gandia-Rosa? I used to be your manager. Now I'm coaching, Shaquille Barrett in the G League. That's an NFL player, my bad. But I feel like the connections that you can make in the networks that, are formed is pretty cool when you're a manager.
It's not just oh, my bad.
You're good.
Okay. It's not just the networking that you make with like coaches, like you said, but the managers are usually, especially in college, they're the same age as the athletes. So they get those friendships, those bonds with those athletes that a lot of people don't get, because when you're just a spectator of a sport, it kind of dehumanizes the sport for you. But once you get involved in it, that's when you see that all of these people, all of these athletes are really good, or most of them, the vast majority of these athletes are very good people, and they're pure. They're just full of life and energy, and you just love to see you just love to be around those kind of people.
And I was a manager for women's basketball back 4 years ago. There's a girl that was from Australia named Claire Ioannidis, and like I talked to her today, like out of him. So talking to somebody you've met for like 4 years, it's insane to build the relationship that quickly. So definitely cool for those managers to get their time in the limelight. But guys, any sports news to get out of this show? Anything you guys want to learn about or talk about?
Can we take a minute to laugh at the Texans because of all the bad trades they've been making?
they're just doing bad. I actually have a Texans jersey somewhere in there. It's
If it's not an Andre Johnson,
It's Matt Schaub back in the day, so we're chilling.
Yes.
We're chilling.
Matt
He's on the Falcons, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. What kind of I mean, we know all about Kyle Larson. Mia O'Brien kind of mentioned that. But iRacing and stuff like that is interesting right now.
So, little Matt Schaub stat here. Last year,
Oh,
he
no.
threw for 400 yards against Seattle last year out of the whim. He messed around, beat the Seahawks badly, Matt Schaub. So,
what team was he with when he beat the Seahawks?
Falcons beat the Seahawks.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember that game. Yes, okay.
Out of nowhere.
John, play us some ukulele. You've been learning.
Trying to find the jersey.
He's trying to find the jersey.
All right, I can't find the jersey, but
Make
last
up
thing
for it with
before-
the ukulele.
we got about 3 minutes left. I'll play a little song. All right, this is "You Are My Son." No, I'm kidding. Nah, I ain't gonna play. You can go check out my article on unfspinnaker.com.
How sweet going to the plug. I love
The
that.
plug, bruh.
Let's see for yourself, guys, at Spinnaker.com.
See for yourself. You ain't watching it here.
But, guys, awesome. Like always, with talking to you guys on sports. So,
That's
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing on Mia O'Brien on the show. And yeah, bet.
Good show.
Adios.
Thanks to me, O'Brien, like you guys said. See you guys next week.
Yep. Adios.
Let's get it.